Um, Good morning. Oh, it's not morning. Good noon. My name's Robert. Yeah, I'm a game developer and teacher at NYU Game Center, as well as Parsons School for Design. And I'm here to talk to you about how to be better at sex in games. Um, First, content warning. In this talk, I'm going to be talking about sex and showing some sexual imagery. Nothing hardcore or what most people would consider hardcore, I think, but feel free to leave at any time for any reason if you feel like you don't want to see this stuff. And now let's talk about sex. Many years ago, I had some bad sex. What happened was, it was 3 a.m., and it was too late to take the train home, and we were doing the things that people do on dates. We were flirting, smiling, nodding, performing our best possible selves for each other. So then, we went back to his place for one last drink, and you know how that goes. We ended up doing stuff. And then we jumped into his bed and stuff. And now it was time for some good, perfect, awesome sex now, right? Awesome, perfect sex. That's what that is. Well, that's when he suddenly kind of stops. And he looks at me and he's like, wait, let's put some music on. And I'm like, okay, yeah, people have sex with music, sure. So he jumps out of bed and opens his computer and he opens up Facebook. And right now I'm thinking like, I thought we were gonna have sex, but right now you're checking Facebook. What's going on? Um, and then that's when he opens up Farmville. Um, I'm literally like speechless. I'm like naked in this bed. I thought we were gonna have like some sexy sex right now. But instead I'm watching him play Farmville. Um, but it's actually like an impressive Farmville farm. Like, like he's really high level in Farmville or whatever. Like he has so many tomatoes and strawberries and stuff. Um, and did you know you could like decorate your Farmville farm with stuff? I didn't know, but now I know. Guess what was there? A jukebox. Um, so then he clicks on the jukebox, which begins making noises that I was later told were music. And music's a very generous word here, I think. Like imagine the default ringtones that came with like Nokia phones in 2006. That's what a jukebox in Farmville plays. And that's what we wanted to have sex to. Am I really that desperate? The answer is yes. Of course I was that desperate. And I kept trying to have this sex anyway. But of course it was just too weird, too funny and sad, and we just gave up and went to sleep, like a lot of people around the world. That was some pretty bad, pretty terrible sex. It was so bad I never went out with him ever again. But is bad sex really that bad? After all, bad sex taught me that I actually value music a lot. And I shouldn't sleep with guys who keep computers next to their bed or something. Bad sex helps us think about sex in general. Because sex is more than just like good or satisfying. I mean, it's good if you can have good and satisfying sex. But sex is also bad. Sex is also often embarrassing. Sex is also weird, funny, sad. Sex is all of these things. My friend and colleague Naomi Clark has an amazing sex game called Sex Mix. Sex Mix is a game for 2 or more players. First, you take turns adding songs to a playlist. Then, all players begin sexual activity and the music starts. If you react to the music, laugh or pause from sex or do something, you lose and you sit out of sex. Well, everyone has house rules for this. And at the end of the playlist, anyone left who didn't react to the music, they win. Naomi's game, I think, is really brilliant because it changes what good sex means. Here, good sex might mean pleasuring someone to the Backstreet Boys without laughing. Most people would consider that to be bad sex. But here it's kind of sweet and kind of lovely almost. So with that Farmville guy, maybe we were actually playing Sex Mix, actually. And then he won, I guess. Maybe winning isn't everything. So this is the power of games. Games, like any art, can help us make sense of our lives. Why shouldn't games help us make sense of sexuality as well? Because for a lot of people, sexuality is a constant source of anxiety. Sexuality was the reason why I felt kind of alone and afraid in high school and growing up. Sexuality is still why so many young people are homeless and commit suicide. Sexuality is why Pulse in Orlando happened. We need to acknowledge this other side of sexuality too, or else we're lying about what sex and sexuality mean and signify to us. And I think this is where camp comes into play, right? It's okay to feel weird about sex. It's okay to feel anxious. It's okay to be bad at sex. Hopefully you're not bad at sex forever, but it's okay for some time. And it's kind of fun. And I think that's what most video games never understood about sex. The image right here is a screenshot from a very popular game, popular for its gay sex, called Dragon Age Inquisition. But I actually don't really like the sex in that one because I feel like it wants to be this weird, perfect porn sex. And perfect porn sex is always clean and efficient, no mess, no false starts, no hiccups or anything. A lot of the AAA mass market games that do talk about sex, even for a little bit, like God of War, Mass Effect, Dragon Age, Witcher 3, the closest they ever really get, these games just isolate sex from the rest of the game. And that's not how sex works, right? Sex kind of permeates all through society, everywhere, and throughout our lives. Sex is not sealed in a little jar that you just open up sometimes and then you close and put it away sometimes. But I think that's how these games handle sex a lot. In these games, sex never bleeds. Sex never oozes outside of a cutscene or minigame. How can you enjoy sex if you can't accept that this is what bodies do and sex does? Sex involves negotiation, awkwardness, and uncertainty. And these things, I think, are beautiful and valuable because they reflect our experiences and honesty. I want to honor the depth and complexity of sex with games. So with that, I kind of want to start talking about a lot of my thinking with 5 of the gay sex games I've made for the past year or two. First sex game I made was a spanking game called Hurt Me Plenty. I was kind of inspired by how BDSM and kink communities think about sex. To them, sex is at least 3 stages, if not more. Negotiation, play, and aftercare. Negotiation is when you kind of agree on the boundaries and with the kind of the shape of sex that you might have. Play is when you actually perform the scene and actually try to have the sex. And then aftercare is when you make sure everyone is okay afterwards and you talk about how you think it went. And I never really seen sex explained to me like that before, but to me it actually kind of made a lot of sense. I think BDSM and kink are kind of about how pain is not the same thing as abuse. But rather abuse is abuse. And if you conflate the two, you're kind of obscuring what abuse actually is. Because abuse takes many forms. It's not just physical. And I think that's what I really like about kink. It's this idea of the safe word, right? The safe word is a word that you say and it ends sex when you say it. And that kind of implies that anyone has the power to end sex whenever they feel like it. And I think that's kind of a really beautiful idea. So that's why the last system in this game is when you kind of violate the NPC's boundaries and continue past his safe word. He locks you out, and the game locks you out and disables your access to it. And it might disable and lock itself for up to like 2 weeks in real life. Because the only real choice a computer program has is whether to work or to not work, I think. I think some players got it, and some players kind of complained and whined to me a lot, and then I banned them from the comments, about how this cooldown period is really harsh penalty. Oh, I paid for this game, blah, blah. But in my opinion, this is actually a very light penalty. Realistically, this person should refuse to speak to you ever again, except through their lawyer. Some players actually reset the game's memory of your abuse as well, which is really fucked up. Can I curse? I'm gonna curse. The second game I made was a game called Succulent, which had a very different tone. In Succulent, you help this same hunky dude kind of eat a popsicle. It's actually straightforward. That's basically the game. A lot of people are kind of confused. They're like, oh, what's going on? That's what's going on. As you do this, he kind of hypnotizes you, and then he eventually kind of just devours you. You're just another popsicle in his life. It's modeled off of a lot of gay homo hop music videos. That's what straight people called it. Like Caswell's Ice Cream Shop or Leaf in the upper right. As well as Go-Go Boy imagery, which often focus on very like flat visual compositions and putting sweaty hot dudes just front and center. It's about being very obvious and flamboyant and very gay. This is a key idea among minorities in the US, this idea of visibility. And as a gay dude, I often feel like I face a lot of racism among gay men. I feel like there's a certain type of gay man that I'm supposed to be. And here there are 3 clones of this type of gay man that I think I'm supposed to be. White, muscular, masculine, blah, blah. If I could just be like one of these gay men, then I would fit in, and I feel like my life would be so much easier. But there's also something very scary about this. The idea that we all kind of want to be the same, we want to be clones that just devour and consume things. With the same body type, same haircut, same skin color. And that's why this character kind of just devours your soul in the end. I think this kind of ideal is a succubus, and that's succulent. I'm smart, am I clever? Thank you, thank you. I needed that. Next, I made a game called Stick Shift. Stick Shift is a game about having sex with your gay car. And you basically give your car a hand job. I won't explain what a hand job is. Hopefully you can look it up. The previous 2 games basically played themselves, so I actually wanted to make a game that was actually kind of difficult. Nothing is really explained, kind of like sex, I feel like. You have to kind of learn and feel the correct timing of shifting from gear to gear. And it just results in constant and embarrassing failure, which I think resonates with many experiences of sex. How do you do sex? Well, some of us in this room will never figure it out. And in that way, sex can be intimidating and difficult, and I wanted to try to capture that dimension of it. How does the car feel about you? Are you having good sex with this gay car? Well, it's difficult to know how a car feels. That's kind of why I needed the human driver over on the left. It was actually a very early suggestion from Paolo Pedercini. He makes games under Mole Industria. You hopefully know who he is. To try to adapt this short film by Andy Warhol called Blowjob. In Blowjob, you just watch this guy for 20 minutes, but you only see him from the shoulders down. And it's called Blowjob, so you kind of guess what's happening, even though you can't see it. And sometimes he looks down and he makes all these faces, and is he a really good actor? Is he actually getting a blowjob? Oh, how do I look when I get a blowjob, right? So then you start thinking through a lot of these kinds of ideas about how we like represent ourselves. So how do you know how the car feels? That's what inspired this kind of thing, where you don't really know how a car feels, so that's why I had to have this dude on the left. When you do something really great and pleasure the car, he smiles and it's great, and his eyes glow, and he's like turning into a car kind of almost. And then when you do something wrong, you like pop the clutch or something horrible goes wrong, he looks shocked and frowns, and that's how you know you just messed up. And then after that, I made another game called Cobra Club. Cobra Club is a dick pic photo studio game. It was inspired a lot by a really fantastic website called critiquemydickpic.tumblr.com. Critique My Dick Pic gives really good, like, earnest reviews of dick pics. They argue that anyone can take a really good, sexy dick pic. They're inclusive along race. They're inclusive of sexuality and gender identity. They're inclusive of just everything, because anyone can take a really good dick pic. And you know, maybe we should take if dick pics instead of a tool for like political scandals and harassment of women, what if dick pics were actually like a source of male empowerment that weren't gross and scary? What if, you know, that helped men feel better about their bodies and stuff? So that's why the character here, which you actually can't see, I guess, in this picture, he's actually not like a super buff, masculine, six-pack model guy from like that Succulent game. He's actually kind of resembles more kind of like my body type a little bit, because I kind of wanted to reflect that kind of realism of a dick pic, I guess. So when you take a dick pic in this game, you actually chat with NPCs on a social network of dick pic aficionados. And in this game, dick pics aren't a source for harassment. You always ask before you send a dick pic, and people ask before they send you a dick pic. And then it's a really great exchange where you're just making dick pics and sending dick pics, and it's just a beautiful sharing of culture. At the same time as I was doing all this, the Patriot Act was being renewed in the US. That's the US warrantless mass surveillance spy law. And there was an argument, can the US government see your dick pics? And the answer is yes, probably they can. So then the game started taking this kind of different direction. You can't feel sexy if you feel like someone is watching you without your consent. You can't feel sexy if you feel like the government is kind of spying on you. So by the end of the game, I actually built into the game, if the computer is connected to the internet, it leaks your dick pics that you make during the game to my server over here, and then I skinned it to be like a weird NSA like database website. And this secret backdoor sends your dick pics to a server without your permission, along with your chat logs and everything. It was my hope that players, you know, these are all virtual dicks, so hopefully it wasn't like actually compromising for people, but hopefully they still felt some kind of privacy was infringed upon. And I'm kind of arguing that intimacy and safety are impossible in a world of automated mass surveillance. And that's kind of the theme in a lot of my sex games, I think. I don't want to keep the fantasy intact, because sex is subject to power relations. And I think there should always be some kind of doubt, always be politics, always have some kind of friction. The last game I made kind of relates to that. It's a shower game. It's the most advanced male shower simulator ever made. It's called Rinse and Repeat. And Rinse and Repeat kind of comes from how gay men kind of have this very common, like a lot of porn, you'll see a lot of gay locker room porn. Which is weird because locker rooms were traditionally these very dangerous places for gay men, right? The idea is that if a straight guy thinks you're checking him out, even though you're not because you're afraid of getting like beaten or something, what if he decides you were checking him out? You don't have a say over this. And if he says that, that means you're done for, right? So it's the idea that locker rooms, there was nowhere to hide. Locker rooms are kind of scary. And I think that's why there's actually so much gay locker room porn, because instead of being this dangerous, scary, masculine place where you're in danger of assault, a locker room is actually kind of maybe, what if it was a safe place where men kind of just accepted you for who you were? So in this game, you scrub a hunky dude in the shower. And it's a public like gym shower. He tells you when you scrub too fast or too slow. So if you go too slow, he's like, oh, come on, harder. And then you go like this really hard. And he's like, oh, no, ow, stop it. So, you want to be actually kind of tender with him. And you kind of want to please him. You're kind of listening to him a lot and trying to pay attention to his cues. But in order to even shower with him at all, you have to make sure you're there on time. Because after his Zumba class, that's when he takes showers. So you have to play the game at actually specific times of the day. So Monday at 4 p.m. in like real life. And if you don't, you miss your chance. You have to wait until like Wednesday for his next Zumba class or something. So my hope is that some people actually kind of like put it in their phones or something, shower with digital hunky dude. And they actually look forward to it a little bit. Because I wanted, instead of the game conforming to your schedule, which is basically every video game, I wanted you to conform and submit to the game's schedule and play the game on the game's terms. Sex isn't always convenient. Sex doesn't wait for you, and I kind of want to reflect that friction here. How much time do I have? Am I doing okay? Okay, I think I can do it. So I'm not the only person making sex games. There's so many of us out there actually, so I also want to give like a shout out to a few games that I think are really important for you to look at if you're not familiar with this. So one important game that actually inspired a lot, hurt me plenty, is called Realistic Kissing Simulator. Realistic Kissing Simulator is basically like a two-player co-op tongue physics game. There's actually a consent phase at the beginning where one player says, do you want to kiss? And then the other person says yes or no. And then if you say no, it says, the game's over, you win, bye. And that's okay, because it's okay to not kiss people, right? But if you do decide to kiss, that's basically what happens. It's just like this really beautiful, surreal movement of like a tongue. And then it's actually kind of tender, right? Here in this image, you can see that the person on the right is kind of jabbing the person on the left in the eye with their tongue. That's not really polite, but their eyes like squint. They're like responsive to it. So it actually kind of highlights kind of the tenderness of bodies. If our tongues were really that long, it would probably be proper etiquette not to jab people in the eye with your tongue. Another really great game that I think is important for you to know about is Consenticle. It's a two-player tentacle sex card game by Naomi Clark. She also made Sex Mix, which I talked about earlier. Basically, it's kind of, if you've ever played like Magic or Netrunner, it's basically that except like tentacle sex. You like chain cards together to produce like satisfaction points. And then at the end, you're kind of looking at all these satisfaction points and you're like, wait, were we competing? I thought we were against each other. And another person would be like, oh, I thought we were like working together. Oh, that's weird. Did we win or lose? Well, I got 10 satisfaction points. Is that winning? So I think what's really beautiful about Consenticle is that it actually has kind of like aftercare built into this, where you actually have to talk about how the game went. And you're like, well, I didn't like it when you did this and took away all my satisfaction or something, right? And I think that's like a really beautiful way of implementing aftercare into a game. Another really great game that I like is called Sabbat. Sabbat is a satanic choose your own adventure beast sex game. Basically, you love Satan in this game, and you imbue your body with like animals. And eventually you create like a really awesome monstrous body, which you can see there on the right. So like, for example, you might like imbue your head with the power of like goats, or like imbue your arms with like eagle crow wings or something. My favorite combination is when you imbue your vagina, because you can have a vagina in this game, you imbue your vagina with the power of a wolf. And when you do that, your vagina is constantly giving birth to fully grown wolves. And throughout this game, there will be parts where it's like, this guy is bothering you. So you send some wolves out of your vagina to devour him. And then the wolves go back in your vagina when they're done. And you feel good about it. But then there's also parts where it'll be like, you want to have sex with this really hot witch. And the witch, you want the witch to finger you. So the witch is like, oh yeah, I'll totally finger you. But then a bunch of fully grown wolves come out of your vagina, and she's like, no, I don't want to finger you because that's scary. And then you're like, that's fair, that's okay. You're a monster, but you're not a monster at the same time, right? So I think that's really beautiful, and I think a lot of gay and queer games like using monster bodies as this metaphor for how we feel about our own bodies. So I think that's why Tumblr is totally into games like this. It really makes sense to people. Striptease is a puzzle game about sex work. And it's really intense. The others are kind of more fun and stuff. This one's actually kind of really, I find really intense every time I play it. It's actually kind of hearkening to this tradition of if you go to some bars, there might be a game where you have to find the difference between two pictures, and you find the difference between two pictures, it'll uncover one article of clothing from a sexy lady or something. So it's kind of hearkening to that tradition a little bit, except here you're trying to match tiles up. And each time you match a tile up, you're kind of undressing the performer in a strip club. And it's actually kind of about how this puzzle mechanic is actually kind of dehumanizing on women's bodies. You're literally segmenting her into parts and viewing her as this abstract collection of parts to look at and organize and restructure. And it's kind of about how undressing is this act of violence. So I think it's actually a really intense game. It might look like a fun pixel art game, but I think that helps kind of disarm your defenses so that you actually really do take it seriously in the end. And then on a lighter, here's a lighter pixel puzzle game. Triad is a tender puzzle game about kind of post-coital sleeping on the same bed together. What happened is these three ladies had some really awesome sex, but now they're tired and now they have to go to sleep. But there's only one bed. How do you fit all three of these partners on the bed? So it's almost, you have to rearrange these tiles and stuff. And the one really beautiful touch I really like about this game is that as you move the tiles around, often in these puzzle tile games, it's a metaphor of two things, and then you pick one thing up and you can move it wherever you want. That's not how it works in this game. In this game, you have two things, and as you move them, they'll actually collide with each other and shove each other around. So as you rearrange the pieces and try to figure out how to organize them on the bed, you actually have to be careful with how you organize them on the bed, because in trying to figure out these combinations, you actually bump other people off the bed and stuff. And it's a really great way of making these pieces feel physical and stuff and how they might relate to each other. So, in the end, I think a lot of the games I talked about are about bodies, and I think that, in the end, is kind of what sex is concerned with a lot. Bodies, and how to represent bodies, and how bodies interact. Broadly, you can turn any video game with bodies into a metaphor for sex. Mario Brothers is a gay sex game about Mario and Luigi plugging holes together or something, right? That's easy, but it also conveniently concentrates power and focus in Nintendo, a giant multinational company. No offense to any Nintendo people here. So when you do that, it's fun to gayify mainstream media and popular media and stuff, but that also kind of conveniently ignores a lot of the gay people who are actually making gay sex games on purpose to describe their own personal life experience. So in the end, I think if you want to be better at sex in games, try to support independent artists making sex games. Notice pretty much none of the games I talked about are like large AAA big game industry games because the game industry views sex games as a huge risk. Um, the finance industry views sex games as a huge risk. I make games and actually have trouble selling them on PayPal because PayPal actually goes against sex industries and sex workers and basically just messes with them. So I actually have to be really careful with how I like market and when I sell my games or not to sell them. So there's a lot of problems with the infrastructure built up to support sex games. That's why it's a niche topic, I would say. So we need your support, not just me, but all these other people making and working in this domain as well. And if you are a game designer yourself, sex as like a 1v1 kind of conflict is kind of lazy and I think kind of boring and probably gross. I think another reason why there haven't been a lot of sex games is because games privilege violence a lot as a central mechanic, and everyone agrees that sexual violence is really gross and creepy. You don't want to gamify that. So if you're like, but all I know how to do is violence, how do I make a sex game? You can't. Don't. Try not to. Try not to lean on violence as a crutch. I love violence. I love violent games. But in the end, it's like 99% of our game vocabulary and design vocabulary is oriented around like conflict. So try to think of game design possibilities outside of that framing, and you'll probably end up with a good sex game, actually. And also just with regard to like visual representation, depiction, don't make perfect porn sex games. I think that's where, again, a lot of the mainstream industry goes wrong. They want these perfect supermodels having perfect ordinary sex or something, but that's not, that feels kind of like dishonest almost, and you can't really like relate or empathize with that kind of thing. Because most of us aren't porn stars, and it's great if you are a porn star, but even if you're a porn star, you probably don't expect to have porn star sex all the time. So try to reflect on sex as this kind of big container, not just sex equals pornography. Sex equals all these things: sad, weird, awkward, depressing. Sex is all those things, and we can be honest with ourselves and design games to reflect that experience of sex. And that's me. Thanks.